There were 2 coffee mugs in the cabinet. Hers was gone. That wouldn't have meant anything, if not for the fact that she hadn't had coffee at home in weeks. She used to drink it with me every morning. Same time, same mug. She'd leave it in the sink, lipstick on the rim like a signature. Then one day, gone. No explanation. No lipstick. No mug. It was just not there. That was the first thing that felt off. The next was the drawer. I opened it to grab a pen. Inside, her notepad, the one she used to doodle hearts and write little lists in, was blank. Completely blank. Like she'd ripped out every page. Like someone had erased her from herself. Like maybe she was hiding something. I stared at that notepad for 10 minutes, not even breathing, as if the pages would confess if I looked long enough. She still came home every night. She still spoke to me. But the words were generic. Polite. Like a receptionist at a dentist's office. One night, I leaned in to kiss her. She tilted her head, like I was a cousin. Or worse, like I was interrupting her thoughts. That's when it started. I stopped reaching. Stopped offering my lips. My hands. My support. She didn't notice. Then, quietly, I stopped something else. I stopped funding her new life. Her gas card? Frozen. Her beauty box subscription? Cancelled. Her separate bank account? Emptied, legally, of course. It was my name on it anyway. Still, she said nothing. That silence said everything. Until the florist called. He asked if I wanted to keep the Tuesday delivery routine. I hadn't ordered flowers in months. Tuesday delivery? He gave me the address. It wasn't our house. And that's when everything broke open like a rotten fruit. I parked across the street. I didn't know what I was expecting. A mistake? A florist typo? Some distant friend she never mentioned? But no, the building stood there like it knew I was coming. Gray brick, no signage, and a narrow steel door with a keypad entry. I sat in the car longer than I care to admit. Just breathing. My hands kept tightening around the steering wheel. My left palm was sweaty, my right freezing. I kept staring at that door like it might blink. Like it might say her name. But it didn't. The florist said the flowers were going to App 2B. Every Tuesday. 2 dozen white lilies. White. Lilies. Her favorite. I never bought white lilies. I always thought they looked funereal. She used to say they smelled like clean regret. And now someone else was sending them, like clockwork, every Tuesday. But not to our house. I should have driven away. Instead, I walked up, waited for someone to come out, and slipped in behind a guy with groceries. He didn't even look at me. The hallway was silent, uncomfortably so. Old carpet, no decor, no life. Just numbered doors and quiet breathing. My heart was pounding in my ears as I stood outside 2B. I don't know what I thought I'd do. Knock? Listen? Kick it down? Instead, I waited until I heard something. Laughter. A soft thud. Then her voice. But it wasn't her talking to coworkers' voice. It was her warm voice. Her real one. The one I hadn't heard in months. She sounded alive. Present. Effortlessly happy. I pressed my ear against the door like a child at bedtime, desperate for a story that would make sense. Then I heard his voice. Low. Confident. Not a name I recognized. Not a coworker. Not a cousin. Just a man laughing with my wife, while white lilies bloomed on a table I paid for. I left before I could be seen. I didn't trust my face to hide the scream I was swallowing. Back home, she was already there. Hair wet, robe on, like she'd just come from the gym. She smiled at me. That fake smile again, the one with no weight behind it. I made stir fry, she said, casually. You okay? I nodded. Sat down. Ate 2 bites. Chewed them for minutes like I didn't understand food anymore. I looked at her. Studied her hands. No ring. When did she stop wearing it? Why didn't I notice? I wanted to ask her. I wanted to scream. But instead, I asked something stupid. Did you ever think lilies were a sad flower? She froze. Only for a second. Then laughed lightly. No. They're beautiful. Why? I shrugged. Just a thought. She looked at me like I was fragile. Like I was someone she had to manage. And then, just like that, she stood up and disappeared into the bathroom. I heard the lock click. That lock was starting to sound louder than her voice. I stayed at the table. The stir-fry went cold. The night crawled by. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed next to her, her body curled away from me, like I was gravity pulling in the wrong direction. At 3:12 a.m., I checked our joint cloud account. It had been empty for weeks. Every shared file, every note, every photo, gone. But there was one thing left. A photo from 3 weeks ago, taken in the mirror. Her, half-dressed, holding her phone, biting her lip in a way she hadn't done for me in years. I tapped on the info icon. It was taken inside apartment 2B. I closed the photo. I closed my eyes. And in that moment, I realized I was no longer married to a person. I was married to a ghost who had already moved on. She just forgot to tell me. But I was done playing the supporting character in her secret life. The next morning, I made a call. Not to a lawyer. To someone who owed me a favor and knew how to dig deep. Back in college, I lent a guy my car when he didn't even ask. He was 2 semesters from flunking out, had court trouble, and a pregnant ex-girlfriend he swore still loved him. Everyone wrote him off. But I handed him my keys, let him crash at my apartment, and told no one. Years later, he's a licensed PI with a specialty in quiet situations. His name's Rudy. He calls himself discreet. I call him a grenade with a tie. When he picked up the phone, he didn't ask why I was calling. He just said, "Give me her name." I hesitated. Not because I was scared of what he'd find, but because, somehow, saying her name in this context made it official. It meant I was ready to pull back the curtain on something I wasn't sure I could stomach. Marnie. Marnie Calloway. She teaches art at Glenhaven Prep. Or used to. I don't know if she still does. I told him about the flowers. The hotel apartment. The voice I heard behind the door. The photo. I left out the part about the way her eyes used to light up when I walked into a room. That wasn't relevant. That was ancient history. Give me 72 hours, he said. And don't interfere. You'll just mess it up. For the first time in months, I felt like someone was on my side. The next 3 days passed like wet cement. She acted normal, whatever that means now. There was a smile here and there. A shared grocery list. She even sent me a meme about people who secretly want to murder their spouses but stay married for tax reasons. I stared at that meme for a full hour. I didn't even find it funny. I just kept wondering how much of it was a joke, and how much of it was her way of saying something without saying it. She still wasn't touching me. Not even by accident. I dropped my keys next to hers on the counter. She moved hers an inch to the left. I reached to hand her a glass. She took it by the rim, fingers never touching mine. She avoided skin like it was fire. Like I was something that used to be safe, and now wasn't. I stopped talking altogether. No point. Every word felt like a balloon I was blowing up just to watch her pop it with silence. Then Rudy texted. "We need to talk. Not over the phone. You'll want to sit down for this." That's when the dread began to harden into something sharper. Not fear, something worse. Realization. I met him at a dive bar 3 towns over. Half-lit parking lot, sticky booth, old country music barely audible through the buzzing fluorescent lights. Rudy slid an envelope across the table like we were doing a drug deal. I opened it, and what I saw wasn't what I expected. First page, Marnie's name on a lease. Not just for that apartment. For 2 units, one under her maiden name, one under a name I didn't recognize. A name I hadn't heard since Marnie's bachelorette party. Leighton Bridger. I stared at that name. My pulse thudded in my temple. He's the guy who used to DJ underground clubs in Cincinnati, right? Rudy raised an eyebrow. More like, he used to DJ until he got banned for sleeping with the venue owner's wife. The second page was a photo. It was them, Marnie and Leighton, at a small art exhibit. Smiling. Her hand was on his chest. His lips near her ear. She was laughing. Laughing in a way I hadn't seen since year 4 of our marriage. My stomach twisted. But the next page was the one that took my breath away. It was a check. From me. From our joint business account. To Leighton Bridger. $5,000. Memo line, studio equipment reimbursement. I felt dizzy. You paid her lover, Rudy said calmly. 3 times. All through that account you let her manage the art side of. I wanted to throw up. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Is this still going on? Rudy leaned back, arms crossed. They've got a trip planned. Paris. Next month. You're paying for half of it. It's tied to the travel card you set up in 2020. She wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just distant. She was using my money to sponsor her escape from me. That night, I sat in the driveway for nearly 2 hours. I couldn't go inside. Couldn't look at her face. Couldn't pretend I didn't know she'd written me out of her life with my own pen. Eventually, I walked in. She was on the couch, watching some baking show. She looked at me and smiled, like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't just dropped a bomb I didn't even see fall. You okay? She asked, voice soft. I nodded once. Said nothing. I sat beside her. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt like a man sharpening a quiet blade. The next morning, I woke up before her. just sat on the edge of the bed and watched the sun crawl across the hardwood floor. She was curled up under the covers like she always used to be, knees tucked, one hand under the pillow, face turned slightly toward me. If I didn't know what I knew, I might have thought she was peaceful, innocent. But now I saw it for what it was, a stranger borrowing my sheets. She didn't stir when I got up. She rarely did anymore. I walked down to the kitchen, made her coffee just the way she liked it. Almond milk, half a spoon of raw sugar, cinnamon dust on top. I placed it on the counter, exactly where I always used to. Then I walked into my home office and shut the door. Locked it. There were no tears. No shaking hands. I just opened my laptop, clicked into the shared drive she forgot I had access to, and started making quiet deletions. First to go, the gallery promo she'd been working on. Gone. All drafts, all backups. I didn't even send it to the trash. I purged it completely. Then, the vendor invoice templates. The autofill payment record she used for her design clients. Poof. I watched it all vanish, one by one. I wasn't sabotaging her work. I was returning it to silence. The silence she'd given me. Then I logged into the travel card portal. The Paris trip. Business class flights. Boutique hotel. Museum passes. Sunset dinner cruise on the Seine. All canceled. But I didn't stop there. I called the card company and froze the account. Told them I suspected fraudulent charges. They apologized. I told them it wasn't their fault. Then I requested that all alerts be sent to me, and only me. They agreed. Marnie still hadn't come downstairs. I checked the clock, 7:48 a.m. She'd be up soon. I opened our shared email calendar, the one she hadn't used in over a year. Still linked to her account, though. I clicked into a recurring event she had forgotten to delete. Leighton Studio, private session. Scheduled every Thursday at 6:15 p.m. I edited the title. Leighton, liar. Then I synced it to her phone. She never checked that app. But if she did, I wanted her to see it. By the time she came down, her coffee was cold. She walked past it without a word, went to the fridge, and opened a bottle of green juice instead. You didn't want your coffee? I asked, voice casual. She didn't even look at me. Felt like something lighter. Then she grabbed her bag, kissed the air near my cheek, and left. And that's when I knew. She wasn't afraid I'd find out. She was betting I never would. Or worse, that I wouldn't do anything even if I did. That night, I went into the guest room closet. I reached behind a dusty stack of board games and pulled out a small black box. Inside, a GoPro, an old burner phone, and a voice recorder. I hadn't touched them in years. Bought them once out of paranoia after a break-in at work. Never used them. Never even charged them. Until now. Over the next 4 hours, I installed a camera in the hallway vent, wired the audio recorder behind the bookshelf in her art room, and slipped the burner into a coat she never wore. I wasn't after footage for revenge. I wasn't going to upload anything. That wasn't me. I just wanted the truth, unfiltered, unperformed, unsanitized. I wanted to hear what she said when she thought I wasn't listening. The first recording was short. Nothing useful. The second changed everything. It was her voice. Marnie. Speaking low. He's starting to pull back. I can feel it. A pause. Then Leighton's voice. So what? He's not going to leave. He's too comfortable. You said it yourself. He hates confrontation. Another pause. Marnie again. I don't hate him. But he's like wallpaper now. Just part of the house. I don't even think he sees me anymore. I shut the laptop and leaned back. Not angry. Not even heartbroken. Just erased. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I didn't sleep at all. I stayed on the couch, where it all started. I stared at the ceiling and thought about all the things I had sacrificed just to be a reliable man. The predictable husband. The wallpaper. But not anymore. Because something had changed, not in her. In me. And the next move I'd make? She would never see it coming. She came home humming. That was new. Hair still damp from the rain. Makeup smudged just enough to suggest she'd wiped it and reapplied. Not that she'd been wearing it all day. There was a distinct energy about her, a glow. Not directed at me, of course. Just radiating from somewhere else. Somewhere I wasn't invited. I was standing at the stove when she walked in. I had made her favorite, creamy Parmesan gnocchi with roasted garlic and seared mushrooms. She paused in the doorway, surprised. What's this? She asked, setting her bag down. She looked cautious. Like I'd done something I shouldn't have, made dinner. I smiled. Just figured we hadn't sat down together in a while. Thought it might be nice. She hesitated, then smiled back. The kind of smile you give to someone you think you're getting away with something around. She poured herself a glass of wine and took a seat. We didn't talk much. Just the usual filler, traffic, weather, something about a student in her class who ruined a project by painting over it in hot pink. I nodded, chewed, sipped my water. She drank the wine like she needed it to keep her face calm. Then, midway through the second course, I dropped it. Casually. Like I wasn't even trying. I ran into someone today who asked me about Leighton. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. Not dramatically, just a stutter in motion. A pause. A flicker behind her eyes. She set the fork down. "Oh," she said, pretending she didn't know who that was. "Yeah," I said, swirling my drink. Apparently he's looking for studio investors. Real, ambitious guy, I hear. Silence stretched between us like a rubber band. Then she leaned back in her chair, folded her arms. "Why are we talking about Leighton?" "Just curious," I said. "He seems to come up in your life a lot." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you spying on me?" "No," I said quietly. "I just noticed things now." That was it. That was the shift. Not the sentence. The tone. The fact that I didn't stutter. That I didn't ask. That I wasn't begging for the truth. I was watching her lie and letting her know I could see every move. She stood up, left the food half-eaten, went upstairs without another word. 10 minutes later, I heard the bathroom door lock. Water running. Cabinet drawers slamming shut. And I knew she was checking everything, her phone, her hidden apps, the burner tucked into her unused coat. I'd already disabled it. I didn't need it anymore. I had the voice recordings. I had the photo metadata. I had the trip receipts, the cross-reference check images, the proof of payment to a man she'd once introduced to me as someone from college who got weird. I had everything I needed, but I didn't want to use it to destroy her. Not yet. See, I wasn't interested in revenge. I didn't want public humiliation. I didn't even want to yell. I wanted her to feel it. Quietly. Slowly. The same way I had. I wanted the floor to shift beneath her, and for her to realize she'd been walking on a trap the whole time. So I left a gift on her nightstand that evening, a printed copy of the flight cancellation receipt for Paris. No note. Just the page. Crisp. Stark. Clear. In the morning, she didn't mention it. She walked around it like it wasn't there. But I saw her eyes. That quiet panic. The kind that grows behind the ribs. The kind you think you can manage, until it starts bleeding into your words, your breath, your smile. Later that day, I got a text. From an unknown number. "You need to stop. She doesn't deserve this." No name. No punctuation. I smiled. Because now I knew something else. Leighton was nervous. And nervous people make mistakes. The number that texted me hadn't just come out of nowhere. I ran it through a tracing tool Rudy had recommended years ago. Nothing direct. No name. Just a burner phone, tied to a prepaid plan bought in Akron 2 months ago. But the phrasing, the way it said, "She doesn't deserve this." That felt personal. That wasn't Leighton. That was someone closer. Someone watching. The next day, I played it like nothing had happened. Made small talk over breakfast, complimented her new sweater, left for work like I wasn't building a map of every lie she'd ever told me. That afternoon, I stopped by Glenhaven Prep, the school where Marnie claimed to still teach 2 days a week. I told the front office I was dropping off her forgotten lunch. The receptionist gave me a blank look. "Marnie Calloway?" she repeated. "She hasn't taught here since January." My ears rang. I thought she was still substituting? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "No," the woman said, pulling up a screen. She resigned. Said she needed time to focus on international commitments. That's what it said in the HR notes. I walked out without another word. In the car, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. International commitments? She wasn't just cheating. She was living another life entirely. I called Rudy. Start checking airport activity. Her passport. Customs. I want to know where she's been going when she says she's tutoring. He didn't even hesitate. Already on it. Also, that number that texted you? Popped back up. Pinged near your house this morning. Briefly. Then disappeared again. That night, I slept with one eye open. I left the side door unlocked on purpose. A test. Not for Marnie, for whoever was watching me. At 3:22 a.m., I heard it. A soft click. The creak of the floorboard near the kitchen. I didn't move. I let it happen. The next morning, nothing was missing. Nothing disturbed. But the printed flight cancellation I'd left on Marnie's nightstand? It was gone. She didn't take it. Whoever was in that house, they had. I checked the hallway camera. Nothing. The vent mic in the kitchen? Still running. But the one in the bookshelf, the one in her art room, had been turned off. Manually. Someone had found it. The next day, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a photo. Not of her. Not of Leighton. It was me sitting on the couch, asleep, blanket halfway down my leg. The timestamp read 2:09 a.m. the previous night. Someone had been inside. Close enough to take that picture. And now, they were warning me. I see you too. I brought the envelope straight to Rudy. Am I being threatened? I asked him, voice dry. No, he said after a long pause. You're being warned. By who? He stared at the photo again, then at me. Probably someone who thinks they're helping her. Or protecting her. But this isn't amateur stuff. Whoever did this is calculated. And Leighton? Rudy looked down. Leighton's not that smart. This is someone else. I nodded, jaw tight. Find out who. Back home, Marnie was cheerful. Overly so. She asked if I wanted to plan something for our upcoming anniversary, her first mention of it in months. Said maybe we should take a weekend to reset. I agreed. Smiled. Then she asked something that made my blood freeze. Have you been having trouble sleeping? What do you mean? I asked. You just seem off lately. Restless. Like you're expecting something. I held her gaze. Maybe I am. She smiled. Tilted her head. Like what? I said nothing. Just kissed her on the forehead and left the room. Later that night, I got another text from the burner. Back off. Not for your sake, for hers. They were watching again. But what they didn't know. So was I. And the next time they crossed my threshold, I'd be ready. I didn't go to work the next day. I told my supervisor I had a personal emergency. He didn't ask questions. I was a quiet guy with a reputation for showing up early and leaving late. No one suspects the silent ones of falling apart. While Marnie left for her meeting, which I now knew meant Leighton or worse, I stayed behind and set the plan in motion. I knew whoever was watching me had access. To the house. To me. Maybe even to Marnie, in a way she didn't realize. So I gave them something to watch. At 10:06 a.m., I moved through the house in plain sight. Opened drawers. Shifted things around. Looked deliberately panicked. I stood in the living room and called a number out loud. A fake number. Left a voicemail with just one sentence. I found the footage. I'm going public. Then I waited. I made myself visible, agitated. I slammed a few doors. Made it look real. And then I left. I parked 2 blocks down and waited in the back of Rudy's SUV. Tinted windows. Microdrone ready. We'd planted it inside the hallway, nearly invisible behind the curtain rod in the dining room. It took 36 minutes. At 11:02 a.m., the back door opened. A man stepped in. Not Leighton. Not anyone I recognized. Late 40s. Gray baseball cap. Thin, average build. Wore gloves. Moved confidently. Like this wasn't his first time inside our house. He moved straight toward the bookshelf, right where the bug had been before. Then to the coat closet. Then upstairs. We watched in real time as he entered the master bedroom. Opened the drawer where the flight cancellation had been. He didn't find anything. But he wasn't looking for it. He was planning something. A small, dark object slid under the bed frame. Rudy zoomed in. Mic transmitter, he muttered. Jesus, this guy's serious. Then the man walked into Marnie's art room. And smiled. That smile chilled me. Not because of what it meant, but because of what it lacked. There was no emotion behind it. Just cold efficiency. As if he was checking on a project. Something he built. I asked Rudy to enhance the feed and take a screenshot. We printed it, ran it through some older scans Rudy had access to from private databases. 20 minutes later, Rudy turned to me with a look I hadn't seen before, concern. His name is Felix Dorn. Former private security, used to work for a family in Chicago. Fired for overstepping boundaries. Then disappeared for a few years. Why would he be in my house? I asked, my voice lower now. Rudy stared at the screen. That's what I'm trying to figure out. But I'll tell you this, he's not watching you for fun. He's being paid. A beat passed between us. And then it hit me. Marnie didn't hire him. Rudy looked up. She doesn't even know he's involved. No, I said slowly. But someone else does. Someone who wants me monitored. Controlled. Cut out quietly. Someone with a plan. My throat went dry. My mind raced backward, grasping at flashes, conversations, gestures, overheard calls. And suddenly, I saw it. It wasn't just an affair. It was an exit strategy. I pulled up Marnie's laptop from a backup Rudy had cloned. There, in a folder named Travel Docs, was a file called Revised Will, Marnie C. I opened it. The language was clean, professional. Her estate, her assets, her trusts all shifted into a private account, with secondary ownership listed under. Felix Dorn, executor. Executor. That wasn't just someone protecting her. It was someone planning for after me. I stared at that word until the edges of the screen blurred. Rudy, I said, nearly whispering, am I in danger? He didn't answer right away. Then, carefully, he said, not yet. That night, Marnie came home and kissed me on the cheek. Everything okay? She asked, almost sweetly. I smiled, nodded, watched her pour a glass of wine. But my eyes didn't leave hers. Because now I wasn't just a husband whose wife had betrayed him. I was the obstacle in a quiet operation, the last variable in someone else's design. And I'd just become aware of the final move on the board. But they'd made one mistake. They thought I was a spectator. They had no idea I was about to rewrite the ending. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not Marnie. Not Rudy. Not even the neighbor who always waved when I took out the trash. The world had been watching me too long. Now I wanted to disappear on my own terms. But before I left, I set everything in motion. First, I printed every document Rudy helped me recover. The forged will, the financial redirections, the trip invoices, and the executor contract naming Felix Dorn. I compiled it neatly in a folder and placed it in the center of the dining table. No note, no explanation, just the weight of her own decisions waiting to be seen. Then, I shut off the hallway camera, pulled the recording devices, wiped every drive clean. They thought I would explode. They thought I'd fight. Instead, I vanished like smoke in sunlight. Before sunrise, I drove 3 states east with only 1 suitcase, 2 journals, and the little black coffee mug she hadn't touched in months. The one that used to say, "You're my favorite, hello." The letters had faded, but not the memory. I kept it with me not out of love, but as a reminder of how quiet betrayal begins. I rented a small cabin by a lake in Vermont. It wasn't glamorous. The floor creaked, and the Wi-Fi was awful. But for the first time in over a year, I could hear myself think. I walked. I read. I cooked for one. I started sketching again. Something I hadn't done since before we met. There was no dramatic confrontation. No courtroom spectacle. No revenge montage. But 2 weeks later, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was a photo. The folder I'd left, opened. Spread out on the dining table. Everything I'd collected. And one line of text beneath it. I don't know who you are anymore. I stared at it for a while, then turned off my phone. Because I did know who I was now. I was the man who saw the signs. Who stopped funding his own disappearance. Who didn't scream when the person he loved became someone unrecognizable. I was the man who left with silence, not broken pieces. Marnie didn't chase me. Neither did Leighton. Felix? Disappeared, just like the others. Rudy tracked him to a coastal town, then lost the trail. Didn't matter. I wasn't looking back. 6 months later, my divorce papers arrived at the cabin. Signed. No fight. No message. Just clean separation. I signed them at the kitchen table, watching the snow fall beyond the window. It was quiet. Peaceful. I thought I'd feel grief. Instead, I felt light. That night, I lit a fire, poured a drink, and sat outside with a wool blanket wrapped around my shoulders. There was no music, no noise. Just trees. Wind. The sound of something old finally letting go. And I smiled. Because this wasn't the ending she wrote. It was the one I claimed. And for once, it felt good not to be holding on.